This chapter has actually done a lot for Gilbert's character. We've seen him grow before as a character, and this was specifically after what happened between him and Nico versus Setsuna and Akoya. That failure, what ended up happening with that, and Shen Wulong's comments as well as Yan grilling Nico and Gilbert led to Gilbert basically becoming, right now he is the god of the underworld. He's gotten an epithet that puts him on par with the first Wu Hei, assuming because he has the same epithet, he is as strong as him and stronger than Edward at this point because he's got a higher title than it. We have yet to see the full developments of that or what that power exactly looks, but now with what's happening between him and the Westwood faction, as well as other things coming to bite him in the ass, we're getting a second amount of growth, which is leading to his competence. So no longer just a power boost, but now just him actually taking responsibility for things, which is something that not even Edward was able. But let's actually get into the chapter because I'll flesh out exactly what I mean by it. And we get a breakdown of the Westwood faction. The chapter's name is called Mischief, of course, forgot to say that. But back to the history of the Wu clan, and the Westwood faction are a split off faction from the Wu clan that happened when the Connector beat the Wu clan way back in the day when he joined forces with the Worm. So a few hundred years ago. We know this happened because Gaio Mokaku also, I think it was Gaio Mokaku, explained that this event actually ended up happening. That the Connector and the Worm actually went to war with the Wu clan, resulting in the Worm actually winning because they had the Connector. But when that happened, they split off to all other places in the world. And the result of that is that they're a very diverse group in comparison to the Kure clan and the Wu clan, which the Kure clan are just the Japanese version of the Wu clan, and the Wu clan is, of course, the Wu clan. The Westwood faction are basically every other place on the globe. And because of this diversity, it's actually harder to unite them because you're more likely to get in conflicts because of, different philosophies, different types of upbringing, as well as them just not knowing you like that. However, Edward was able to do that with the help of his brother. So this implies that before Edward and Howard came into the picture, there was really no unity with the Westwood faction. But the main reason they were able to do this was because of their overwhelming strength. We know Howard, on paper, was a very powerful person. Edward, I don't even need to say that he was powerful at this point. But yeah, they stood at the top of the hierarchy, uniting everyone. But the most important thing here is that the strongest Westwood faction groups in terms of regions are actually the Middle East group and the African group. So even though Edward and Howard, I think they were from either America and they ended up uniting Europe, as well as various other factions across regions. Those two are the big ones. And the heads of those two, as well as, of course, the group as a whole, respected Edward and Howard for their overwhelming strength, of course, and the fact that they were pretty good leaders because they were able to basically accomplish what was a phenomenal task, and of course their power, even though they didn't necessarily like them. So this goes into what Amir was saying, that Edward had charisma. He had met Edward before. That's the respect that he was talking about. And we just cut straight into Amir spitting more facts at Gilbert. And this is where it gets very rough for Gilbert here. Amir is like, they're not really mainline branch members of the Wu clan, meaning they don't have any inheritors of the Wu Hei memories, so they're not really that attached to the Westwood faction, of course. In fact, they don't even like the practice of, I think it was Hun Shuang. They ain't vibing with that. Amir says that repulsive practice should die out. So it's not like they were biggest fans of Howard and Gilbert's character, right, in terms of the things that they did, but he respected him as a leader. Then he starts, looking at Gilbert's history real quick in the short time that he has taken over, and he starts talking about William, who got killed by Kure Ryan. Word went out that this happened. And then he goes even further back. He's like, first heard your own brethren, meaning when Gilbert started ascending into power, he fought within the Westwood faction already. So he killed Howard and a bunch of other people in a civil war, a cataclysmic L, because of where they're at right now. But Amir is like, that happens. You have civil war, multiple of your men die, and now your closest dude, William, is dead. Like, I can't follow you. You're at the very least incompetent. And the African group feels the same way. Amir speaking for not only the Middle East, he's speaking for the African brothers. He's like, they ain't vibing with. And at this point, Gilbert gets more bad news, because one of his subordinates come back and is like, look, Gil, this ain't a good time. But the war we're having with the Wu clan and the Kure clan, it's not going so well. Because even though they're more powerful on a one-on-one, at least generally in comparison to the average of what the Wu clan and Kure clan have to what they have, they're severely outnumbered now, especially since they got purged in the civil war that Gilbert started. At this point, when he says that part, one of the other subordinates is like, hey yo, wait a minute, why you gotta say that, bro? And Gilbert's like, are you actually calling me incompetent? And unfortunately for this Westwood faction member, he's talking unfiltered here. He didn't mean to say it that way. Normally, that would get this man smacked around, if not killed. In fact, the person next to him is like, hey yo, wait, you should think before you say something, bro. But Gilbert, he's like, it's cool, he's actually right about what's happening here. And we see Gilbert start to take responsibility for essentially the position that they're in right now, because he literally says he underestimated the Kure clan and Wu clan, and he also adds on to the fact that he's also failed in uniting the Westwood faction. So that's saying a lot. And in this panel we see a lot of other Kure members. In the official chapter we see Howard. I don't think in the drafts we see Howard in the picture where Gilbert is admitting, or taking responsibility for the situation that they are in right now. Because seemingly there is a world where Gilbert could have taken over the Westwood faction with as minimal casualties as possible, and they would be in a better position right now, because most of the fighting force died in the civil war, and so they need the Middle East and African groups, and as well as various other groups, to fight with them just to stand a chance. But with the death of William, there's a very poor track record, because Amir is looking at this like, if this is how he's treating the people that are the closest to him, he's not really worth sticking his neck out for, because chances are, if he's not gonna have his back, William was his #1 goon, even they know it, then he's no one. He's going to die. And this is, at least in my opinion, similar type of incompetence that we were seeing with Edward, because a similar thing was happening with Edward, especially in the Purgatory versus Kengan association. I detail this in my analysis of the character, as well as another video I did where I talked about why Edward deserved to die in the way he did. And yeah, he stacked the deck against himself, unfortunately. The reason Alan died is because he didn't actually want to fight in the tournament. He put Alan there instead, which was a mistake. But once he had made the mistake, he carried on making the same mistake. Because when he has Ryan right in front of him ready to be killed, he leaves him. And this is while he still has his other clone. And during the entire fight with the Wu clan and the Kure clan, he lets his clones die one by one until it's actually his turn. He never wakes up and sees that, hey, I'm losing protection, I'm actually putting myself in a bad spot. He relies on his strength way too much. And Gilbert, at least in this case, has a chance to move beyond Edward in this way. But he needs a win. He needs a victory. It's all well and good that he's admitted to defeat, but now is the time for that to bear fruit. And Gilbert then says his only choice is to rally back from here. He needs to redeem his stocks. And first thing on the list, the death of Kure Ryan. This is gonna be a huge task for him because 1, we know this is a story. 2, we know Ryan is probably one of the most beloved characters and favorite characters in the series. How is Sandrovich going to be able to write this in a way where he doesn't lose an audience here? Because look, Gaolang fans, they are crybaby whenever he loses. I am scared of what will happen when the Kure Ryan fan base starts crying. Like, if Gilbert actually manages, like, let alone kill him, whoop his ass, it will shake the foundations of this series. At least that's what I think. But if Gilbert fails, you have built up a lot that led to nothing. So Sandrovich is going to be in a very awkward position because the best case scenario I can think of is Gilbert beats Ryan, maybe puts him near death, but for some reason doesn't manage to kill him, and then Ryan comes back. Because remember, Ryan is fresh out of his own training, got parallels with the connector as well, he knows principles and everything. So there's a lot on the line. It's gonna be very interesting to see what happens, because assumably, because of how the pacing is going right now, this fight is gonna happen before the tournament. Ryan versus Gilbert. And yeah, it's gonna be wild seeing how this will actually happen. But yeah, Gilbert's idea is to basically start by killing Ryan and then trying to rally the Westwood faction from that point. Amir also said that, hey look, kill Ryan, kill that dude, and we'll start respect. Cause Ryan is at that point right now where he is a scary individual even to the Middle East and African factions, right? But that's it. First part of the chapter, we still got a ways to go. I spent a lot of time on the Gilbert section, even though I didn't talk about the panel where he actually says this being pretty funny. But yeah, we transfer over to the police department in Japan, and Ohma is talking to the consecutors. He's asking them why they haven't broken out of jail already, and this is the second time they're meeting up with one another, which is very weird because it almost seems like this was the first time. I was a bit worried, but no, this is the second time everyone acknowledges it. The consecutors actually say that the reason they haven't broken out is because, of course, they don't want to put Yan in any bad position here, because they are, to a certain extent, linked to him. But we get a recap of the consecutors and what exactly they are, so Scarface and Lucky Boy origins, as well as the difference between them and, of course, Ohma and Ryuki. Ohma then asks why they actually called him down here, and the consecutors are like, yeah, we called you down here because we couldn't really go to you because we were kind of in jail and everything, but you need to reconsider actually getting Shen Wulong's memory. And this is what they talked about the first time. Ohma, of course, knowing Ohma, turn that down. He's gonna rely on his own Nico style, you know, he learned that martial arts. But the consecutors are like, look, this is for your own good. You need to inherit those memories because of course, Lohan. Ohma says he doesn't actually want to become the next connector, but Scarface, one of the consecutors, says don't think of it that way. Just think of them as just learning another type of martial art, because Lohan has sort of taken this martial art and he's probably far stronger than he was when they fought them, the consecutors, and we saw that fight. He low-diffed them basically, and at this point, because it's probably been a few days, maybe even a month or two, he's far stronger than he was that time. Ohma still being insistent that he wants to get stronger in his own way. The consecutors are like, look, Lohan's gonna end up winning. He's going to get his way if you don't do this, right? And Ohma starts asking about the consecutors' allegiance, and they confirm that they're on the connector's side, which is very interesting. But they don't mind Ohma actually beating the connector because he isn't like Lohan at all. So they're really against Lohan actually becoming the connector in any way here. That's the thing they're trying to avoid. But we then have a camera shot from the top because they're talking in prison. They haven't, and there's a camera, of course, watching them. At this point, Ohma has somewhat caught on to what's happening, and he's like, so you actually brought it here. And when he's talking to the camera, he's actually talking Metsudo, because of course Ohma calls him Gramps. Ohma's like, I see, so he kind of set this up. Now, what's interesting, because Ohma's like, there are no guards in here, which sort of hints at what's about to happen. We're going to have another sparring match. And Metsudo's like, hi, he ended up catching on. Metsudo, of course, he's looking at other fighters here, looking at how his stocks are going in the Kengan Association, of course. He has stake here. The police general as well is kind of letting this slide under the books. And the consecutors now stand up and they're saying, look, alright, you're gonna have to prove your strength. If you don't want the memories, you're gonna have to beat us up. And we'll just use that as a measuring stick from where you are in comparison to Lohan, whether or not you can afford to be as arrogant as you're being. And this is going to be very interesting because that's where the chapter ends, because Ohma's like, yeah, that's good, I prefer this than actually talking. How Ohma does against the consecutors would actually be better to gauge the progression between him and Lohan, because Lohan, he low-dipped these guys, but even then the connector was absolutely destroying Lohan. So we'll see how this ends up going. It seems like this is the best way to use the consecutors, because one of the biggest complaints here is that we didn't know exactly how strong they are. We know they're so powerful, but we need a comparison to see how well they do against Ohma, who is the strongest he's ever been at. But yeah, that's the video. Yapped on for quite a while with this one. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it